Lee, I am so excited to have you here on the Homeschool Sanity Show podcast with me. I know you, but I am hoping that you are going to tell us more about you and your family before we dive into the topic.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm super, super excited to be here. Yes, my name is Lee Felix, and I have been married for about 26 years. I was trying to remember that. I have five kids, and they are four girls and one boy. So that's kind of important to know the difference there because there's so much involved in that. And I'm really super passionate about parenting. As I've had as my kids have grown, they are now 19, 18, 16, 15, and 10. So we're kind of right into the young adult, teen, and tweens, covering all the things, which are areas that I'm super, super passionate about as well. I am definitely consider myself an imperfect mom as well. And so my kind of mission has been to come alongside moms that are really feeling the messiness and the heaviness of life and parenting and homeschooling and all that entails. Our journey in our family has been had packed full of challenges, and we have a lot of different things from chronic illness to mental health struggles, and just that messy middle. So it has been an absolute pleasure for me to be able to come alongside other moms, whether it be through my website or local ministry, and just be able to support and encourage them and talk them through this tween to teen parenting and what that looks like. Because a lot of people have a lot of questions.
Absolutely, they do. Now, when you and I met, you were homeschooling. Are you still homeschooling?
hmm So I just
You are.
graduated my two oldest. Graduated homeschool. I do have two that go to a private school, and then my youngest is a 10-year-old and she's homeschooling still. So
Okay. Now, why did you choose to homeschool initially?
that's a great question. It kind of makes me laugh every time because, to be honest, I never had any intention of homeschooling. I was like, there's no way I can do that. Gave all the credit to the moms, but I was like, not for me. And just as God would have it, when my oldest, who's now 19, was getting ready to start kindergarten, he dropped us into this. We moved from Wisconsin to Kentucky and dropped us in this community that was a lot of seminary families and a lot of homeschooling families. And all of a sudden, I found myself with this like inside look to, okay, what does that look like? I'm seeing them live out like homeschooling, and it kind of piqued my interest because I knew that I wanted our kids to, I wanted to be close to them, make sure that we're instilling biblical worldview and values and character. For us, public school wasn't really ever on the table, but neither really was private school at the time. And so, homeschooling just seemed terrifying. And just the way that God would have it, imposter syndrome and whatnot, I stepped into it and have seen the massive benefits in our family since. And it's just been such a joy to hear from our kids now the benefits that they have seen from homeschooling. So,
Yes, I love that.
yeah.
I would maybe like to do a podcast episode on that in the future. I doubt I could talk all of my kids into into joining me, but it would be pretty fun.
That would be.
Um, yeah. Well, let's just shift gears a little bit and start talking about tweens.
Mhm.
You have said that today's tweens are facing a crisis. What do you see as the biggest challenges that Christian tweens rather,
Mhm.
are up against right now?
There's so many. And really, that's kind of a message that I want to shout from the rooftops because as much as, we try to make those connections from our childhood to theirs, it is so vastly different. They are faced with entirely different things by being bombarded by media and everywhere that they turn, messages of championing disrespect and gender questions and comparison. And it's a super, super, super challenging environment for them to live out their childhood, no matter how much we are trying to protect them from it. And I think that, by the time that there's so many studies show that by the time that they're 11, 12, like they're already dealing with these, silent struggles of anxiety and depression and big emotions and lots of questions about, their faith and who they are and who God really is. And, I think that we can't just afford to sit around and wait for the teen years to have these discussions, because by the time that they hit that, they've already formulated these opinions and thoughts, and their moral ground and their foundation is pretty well established at that point. So I think these challenges that they're faced with when they don't know a safe place to turn to process them, it can be very dangerous. And that's why I believe that they're in crisis, is that so many of them go on struggling alone and silently. And then, I will have the pleasure of meeting them later on in teen years, but there's so much there that you're trying to then recover from, where if we can grab that foundation as tweens and build on that, it can shift everything.
Why do you think that so many of us as parents just kind of wait until the teen years to deal with some of the problematic issues?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot to be said there for maybe the way that we were raised. There's a big shift. I know that there wasn't a lot that I was talked to about until it hit the teen years. But I think also because, in all honesty, like, it's awkward and it's hard and it's super uncomfortable at times. I have had, just by our own experience, because of different things that we were facing with my oldest daughter, I have been put into many different conversations that I never would have wanted to be put into, had conversations earlier than I ever would have wanted to. But now on the other side of that, I've been able to see how God used that and how he really used those awkward conversations that are so crucial for a foundation of connection and openness and everything later on in life, and definitely into the teen years. So I think a lot of it is just that we don't know what to say. It feels awkward and uncomfortable. And a lot of us were raised where you just can wait and you wait it out, or you wait till they approach you. So,
Yes. I mean, you've really begun to touch on my next question already, but I'm wondering if you can elaborate on this. What are some mindset shifts that parents need to make to better connect with and disciple their tweens in today's culture?
I think they're one of the most important ones that I see and hear and have experienced myself is just becoming proactive instead of reactive. And, it's so much easier. I mean, we're busy parents, we're overwhelmed, we're dealing with a lot of different things, and it's so much easier to just deal with things as they come at you. But oftentimes, by the time that they bring it to you, or by the time that maybe you realize something's going on, they've already had conversations, they've already had thoughts, feelings, emotions, all the things about whatever it is that they want to talk about. And if we're lucky, they will then bring it to us. And so I think instead of, like I said, waiting, if we can be proactive and, be intentional about having these conversations, I think it's key. That's definitely one. Another crucial one is just kind of letting go of the assumption that, whether we're talking about things that they will experience in person or if we're talking about online, either way, we kind of need to let go of that assumption that maybe it's going to just be a safe place, or it's going to be fine, or there's not much to deal with, or they really probably don't know about XYZ, or because I talk to so many parents that, and I too experienced this with my oldest, we're just devastated because you don't realize what they're actually being faced with, what they're actually dealing with, seeing, engaging with, whether that's in person and, Christian, whether it's church or homeschool or any kinds of environments. I mean, we're not exempt. And I think that we can really do a disservice to our family, but also, I feel like the enemy likes to jump in there when we just think, okay, it's a safe place, it's a kid's thing, it's whatever. And I've just seen time and time again, like the heartbreak over that and kind of doing that repair. So just not control, but just being aware and involved and, really intentional about what your kids are doing, where they are, how you can interact with them, that kind of thing is super key.
That is just so good. And I think we all are prone to it, just burying our heads in the sand or just saying la 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 la.
Yeah.
Not going to happen to my child. I'm homeschooling. We go to church. We're not in any dangerous places. Maybe I monitor social media, online, the computer, the internet. I'm doing a really good job with this, so it's not going to be my issue. But I think what you are saying is that we have to really even assume that it can be an issue and then begin having conversations with our kids about these issues so they aren't, as you're saying, coming to us when they're already into it really deeply.
Right. Right. And I think that, one of the biggest gifts that has been in our family in, the good side of the awkward, uncomfortable conversations is that you have that opportunity to really walk through things with them when they're in your home, right? We want a safe place for them to fall. We want to be able to help them know how to actually handle this. I mean, even down to sometimes, we've had conversations like, what are the words that you can say? How can you set boundaries? How can you do this? What kind of response would you give to this? And just, playing out those things instead of kind of, the way that it's worked out for us is engaging in that now instead of just kind of waiting until later and having them figure it out on their own has been a really big benefit to them and to our relationship. And so I think it helps them to learn how to handle things and prepares them better for the future when they are doing it all on their own. I think that's super key.
What role do you think that technology and social media play in where our tweens are at today with so much pressure and stress and confusion that they have?
Yeah, I think that as a lot of parents do, I think that it's a double-edged sword. I think that it can be a beautiful thing and we can use it for really good things and even in, within schooling and connection and whatnot. But we also have seen we're finally sadly starting to see some of the statistics and the ways that it's actually affecting kids and their confidence and their mental health and their connections and just being able to engage in conversations and, navigate that in healthy ways. Even when my oldest, who's 19, was younger, we just didn't know. We didn't know what that was going to turn out to be. And now we're just, tipping that, getting a little chip of the iceberg and seeing, wow, this is hugely detrimental in a lot of different ways if not taught how to deal with it well. And even my oldest, soon I had realized how much, little bits and pieces of listening to different things and allowing different things in just started to shift and change and really mold her opposite to the way that we were trying so intentionally to do in our home. And so I think it does play a big role. I think that, there's also, as they get older and, might have been on social media and things like that, there's also a great part that kind of continues from, having those conversations in person and maybe navigating with them to now we interact and we enjoy each other and whatnot on there as well. And so I think there's positives from it too, but really coming from a place of awareness and really intentionality with teaching them how to handle it well.
Yes, that is a great addition to what you were saying, that, you're not suggesting that, we have to eliminate all technology from our home. It's just not practical anymore. At least the people who are listening to us know that it's not practical. Maybe there are some people out there who are making it work being a low tech family, but I love how you're suggesting that if we teach our kids how to use technology, social media, the internet, whatever you want to call it, and how to use it and still be true to your beliefs as a Christian, as a moral young person, that this will pay off when it comes time to continue your relationship with that child once they're out of your home. So I love that. And I think if we have that type of attitude about it or mindset, as I was asking you about previously, it might not have such a negative fear-based connotation as I think it can absolutely have. And I was there. I was absolutely there. So, but we're not going to dive deep into how do you manage social media because that's not our that's not our topic for today. But what are some practical steps that parents can take right now to intervene if there is a crisis going on, or to begin to prevent crises from occurring in the future with our tweens?
My number one practical step is working on communication. We very much try to make sure that we have a no questions off limit household. Also, I work very hard as a parent, and I'm not saying that I do this right all the time, but over the years I've seen the detriment that it's done. But I try to not be a shock and awe parent, and so really making sure that when they're coming to you with something, no matter what it is and how hard it can be, and I've had those really hard conversations, so I don't say that lightly. That you're not responding in a way that would scare them off or make them feel shame, and just make that disconnect grow, instead of do the opposite, where you're trying to connect with them and build communication and to really have open conversations about all of these things. Communication, I think, is key, and I'm constantly trying to grow in my communication and with my kids as well. But I've seen the different ways of doing it over the years that I've failed in, and the ones that have been more of a success. And it's always been more of an open conversations, communication. So that's number one, is keeping communication open and really being intentional in how to have good conversations around things. And no, I've also learned it doesn't mean like sitting there trying to be the teacher all the time, because, they don't always want that. Right. And so just really praying through like what kinds of things that I need to say and when. And then being willing to talk about anything that they want to talk about, even at the most uncomfortable, inopportune times of your day, as usual.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think made it hard for you especially in your earlier parenting years with tweens? What made it harder to be open to hearing to what your tween had to share?
I think a couple of things come to mind. I think that a lot to do with the way that I was brought up. It just is like there wasn't a lot that was discussed. We kind of just did. On top of that, I think my own confidence as a parent, because I had no idea, right? What I still don't, but you have no idea what you're doing. And so that lack of confidence kind of, sometimes I'm grasping at straws and like, okay, this is just the way it has to be, and it's got to stick. And I was more closed off that way. And I think too, just my own personal kind of struggle there was that I was not a saved believer when I was growing up. And so I had no idea how to, raise kids that love Jesus and were able to do that. And so I think that confidence and that lack of understanding there was, made it difficult too. But there is a part of me that's always been, let's just talk about the hard things. And that's the way that I'm wired. And so I think that by God's grace, that's what, really opened up those doors. 'Cause I'm like, I'm not that afraid. I'm awkward often, and I'm not that afraid to go there with hard conversations. I'd rather go there than skim the top. So I think that just was a gift to me that he gave me in my parenting, especially with everything that we had to deal with. That was a lot to navigate. So.
Right. One thing, now this was not with a tween, not that I didn't have any issues with tweens, but something that I learned about myself when I had an adult child who was having some challenges. It was actually more than one, but when I had adult kids who were having challenges, my mind immediately went to, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And that was really a complicating factor.
Mm-hmm.
It made me ineffective, honestly,
Oof.
in helping to coach my then adult children. And I think that a similar change of thinking could be helpful to parents in talking to their tweens. You know, when your tween says something or is considering something, exploring something, doing something
Mm-hmm.
that you wouldn't ever want them to say or do or consider, you can feel like, what did I do? Where did I go wrong? What did I leave out? How did I approach this from the wrong direction? And when it's about us, we really can't focus on what our child needs in that moment. So that is just something that I would add. And to me, it sounds like you figured that out earlier than I did. Um, but, I really needed that. And quite honestly, I might have said this in an episode before, but quite honestly, one of my adult children who was not really involved in the problem was the one who said, "Mom, I don't want you to think that you're a bad mom."
Oh.
And I know it was just the sweetest thing ever, but that helped me to realize that I had to get myself out of that
Mm-hmm.
situation and focus on what my adult child in this case really needed from me.
Yeah, that's such a great point, and that's something it brings to mind when dealing with some struggles that we were dealing with as teens. One of my mentors had said, just as much as we raise our kids to the best to our ability, and God loves them more than we do. But as much as we can't really take credit for their accomplishments, we can't always take credit for their failures either. And so we do what we can, and yes, everybody makes mistakes, and that's the imperfect mom in me. But I do think that that's super important, because I 100% have been the same, where I'm just hindering what that work that needs to be done there, and it's not at all effective. So I get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything else that you would say to a parent besides beginning to work on their communication and really improve that and be open
Mhm.
to discussing anything that you would recommend that parents focus on right now?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things, but utilizing resources. There's so many things out there, whether it's books or this podcast or different things. Like we live in a day and age where we don't have to do this alone, and so I think still, and I would actually say the older that the kids get, like I feel like parents just feel like go more and more inward and feel like they need to deal with it on their own, or they're so maybe embarrassed of the choices that their teens are making, or their preteens, like, and I don't think that anyone needs to walk it alone in this day and age. I don't think that that's how the most effective for anybody. And so I think just utilizing resources, whether it's online or in person in your community, whatever it may be, to connect with other moms, because I can guarantee you that there's other moms that are struggling, other parents that are struggling, and dealing with some of these things as well. And so instead of that kind of beautiful community that seems to happen when the kids are younger, it just kind of disperses as we get older. And I really think that there's a better way to go about that. So utilize resources and connection with others is a big one, in my opinion.
Yes. Did you reach out to other moms for support and
Oh,
even some guidance in your
yeah,
situation?
absolutely. I mean, that was invaluable. I don't think that I could have gone through with it without the support of others. I mean, it was just learning from other moms that have been before me, whether they were in exact situations or not, has been so key. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that is excellent. I love that advice. And then Would you recommend in some situations pulling in someone else to help with your child's situation, whether it is a pastor or another adult family member that your child feels close to? What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. That's been another thing that has been so beneficial, especially in the hardest of times, especially depending upon which child it may be and which your connection may be with that child. But there are things that others are able to speak into, you know, my kids, and I have the privilege of doing the same in, my youth group as well, where they're not as well received from mom and dad. They don't want to listen to mom and dad. And no matter how great your relationship can be too, there's still those things that other adults, especially if they feel like they have a connection with them, other adults are able to speak more into that, and it is much more well received in my experience anyways. So
And I think that is an important issue to address, because when I started homeschooling, there was this idea that you wanted to avoid things like youth groups, other teachers at church who could be teaching your child things that you don't agree with. And that is absolutely true. I'm not saying that isn't true.
Right.
I have experienced it firsthand, where I'm thinking, what in the world are you teaching my child here in Sunday school? However, if you have a strong-willed child, releasing some of your authority to have your child be under the authority and teaching of someone else that you trust.
Right.
And respect that they have the same values, and you've talked about what you believe about the issue that they're going to be working with them on. It can be incredible, because your child is watching you trust God enough to allow them some freedom to, be under the authority of another adult, and to get counsel and advice and coaching from someone else. And it can reduce some of the friction, if there is any, between you and that child who is pushing back against your authority. Not that I am not suggesting in any way that your child shouldn't be expected to respect and obey you. Of course,
Right.
Of course. But having another adult come alongside you to carry some of that load with a child who is dealing with some challenges can be very, very helpful.
Absolutely. I've definitely experienced that and seen that too. Yep.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about some resources to help parents support their tweens spiritually and emotionally. I know that you have created some of these. Can you tell us about what you have created, and where our listeners can find those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, being that I have 4 girls in the home, I have a course that's called Girls Created to Shine, and it is a 12-week course, God's Word and girls' struggles. So we talk about real practical things like emotions and friends and all of the different challenges that they're navigating, because that definitely starts in the tweens and continues on. And then also has some fun kind of practical applications at the end. We always do something. So like if you're talking about serving and being Jesus' hands and feet, there's mini manicures that you can do. Just ideas of things like that you can do with your tween. And so that people have used in, their home with the parents or in homeschool settings as well. And so that's something that I'm really excited about. And then there's some other options on my site that have to do with encouraging your tween. And there's a Bible study for a fruit of the spirit for tweens on there as well, to get them a little bit deeper in the word. So my site is at likemindedmusings.com. And so there's definitely resources there. I also have a free ultimate tween girl resource list, and that has a whole bunch of different resources on there for parents.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Lee, I hope you will share those links with me so that I can include those in the show notes. They sound wonderful. I'm kind of almost wishing that I had a tween daughter still. I
Almost.
bet it's almost,
Yeah.
almost. I adore having an adult daughter. I bet you do too.
I do.
I know you have more than one, but it's just worth it. All of the heartache and the difficulty, the challenges, it can all feel that you're just doing what God wants you to do. And that is just one thing that I want to add as a reminder. And then I'm going to ask you for a last word of encouragement for parents who are having tween issues, is that God does not ask us to produce results. He does not say, it is your responsibility to make sure that your kids are all saved and all walking with me. He says that our responsibility is to train our children up, to teach them about him, to teach them the word, to love them. Absolutely, to model for them, but it is never to produce the results. That we leave up to him, and it's an interaction that we don't even really understand, right, between our child and the Lord. And we just keep praying and pray. So, okay. So what is a final word of encouragement that you would like to share with, especially our moms?
I think you summed it up beautifully. And that I actually was going to say too, is one of the practical things is that like pray, like with them, for them, all of it. It is, I'm kind of at the point in my journey where I have been able to see God answer prayers that have been years and years or decade-long prayers. And that is something that I don't have words for. Yes, there's some that have not been, but it's when you think that there's nothing else that you can be doing, or we go to prayer as a last resort, it's really our biggest weapon as a mom. And so just keep praying, and definitely, like you had said, the results aren't up to us. It can be done imperfectly. It can be done, it's just that we are being intentional and we're submitting them to him. He loves them more than we do, which is so hard to fathom, but it's so true. And so just staying the course, even in the messy, even in the hard, and just really trusting those results to him is just so key.
Yes. And I just have to say, I love the reminder to pray with our child, not just for, but with.
Yep.
And even if your child acts like they don't care, that it's not important to them, do it anyway.
Yep.
You don't know what it is doing in their spirit. And I believe it is doing something. And it's just a testimony of our love for them. That even if they're behaving badly, that we are still in there praying for them and loving them with all of our hearts.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Well, Lee, this was wonderful. And I'm so happy that you took the time. I know you're a very busy person, but you took the time to join me and share with us on how we can help our tweens. And I am hoping that our listeners are going to go and get the resources that you were mentioning. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun. Thank you.